Right, welcome back everyone. I'm glad you could join me again for the third of our 4 life skills sessions. So I'm going to get the ball rolling and bear with me here just a moment. Share my screen. Okay. If you all can see this, give me a thumbs up again. Perfect, I see some thumbs. We're good to go. All right. So welcome to session 3. Today we'll be talking about practical ways to be kind to yourself. So many of you are familiar faces already on this Zoom chat, but in case you haven't met me yet, my name is Heather. I'm an OT working in Toronto, and my background includes work in Ontario, in British Columbia, where I've worked both in the hospital and the community. And currently I work in Toronto, where I help people in the community recover from their injuries after car accidents. This includes work with people who've had brain injuries, concussions, spinal cord injuries, mental health diagnoses, and other physical injuries. So today, what I'm going to be sharing with you in this life skills session is focused on practical strategies to be kind to yourself. And when I first started talking to Beat about running these life skills sessions, this was a topic that it sounded like it would be quite helpful to talk about, especially with all of the changes that have happened in the past 5 months with COVID. So with that, the strategies that we're going to be talking about today will build on some of the life skills that we've talked about in previous sessions. And I'm also going to be sharing some tips that I've seen be useful for people I'm working with in my job as an OT. And I'm also really looking forward to hearing from you, maybe some strategies that you found useful, particularly in the past 5 months as well. As a reminder, today is week 3 out of 4 for the life skills sessions that I will be presenting. If you were here in the past 2 weeks, we previously talked about the pillars of health and self-care. And then last week, we talked about strategies to successfully organize your week. And if any of you are interested in the handouts from those sessions, Nicole has those slides. And I believe last week has also been uploaded on YouTube if you want to check that out later. Week 3, that's the bolded one today. That's what we'll be talking about. So practical ways to be kind to yourself. And before we get started with that, I want to draw your attention to week 4, which is our final week. We've got one more session to go after today. And next week, we'll be talking about different types of strategies to assist with cognitive challenges. And if you're interested in joining us for that final session, be sure to register at bead.ca. So today throughout the presentation, like always, I'll be taking breaks, lots of breaks to answer your questions, as well as for us all to have discussions as a group. And if you think of anything as I go along, feel free to type it in the chat box down below, and I'll make sure to answer any questions you have when we take a break. So because this worked so well last time, I'd like to get started with a bit of a brainstorm. Thinking about, well, what does it mean when we say, I'm trying to be kind to myself? And I'm interested to know if you're willing to share what this looks like for you. I'll give an example for me. So when I'm working, I like to take some breaks in the middle of my day to go on a walk. This makes me feel really good, helps me stress less. And I find by trying to do that over the course of my day usually is better, and I'm usually feeling better about myself. So that's an example for me of what I do to be kind to myself. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment in case any of you would like to share some strategies that work for you. And a lot of you have touched upon things that I'm going to be going through again as we go along, but it's great to start to think of what this looks like for different people. And it's interesting that you've all shared slightly different examples as well. Okay, so jumping back into it, thanks for sharing. So before we get into specific strategies, I just want to take a moment to think of, okay, well, what does it mean when we say kindness? So kindness is being generous, friendly, and considerate. And this is typically something we think about doing or sharing with another person. So for example, this could be welcoming a new person, helping someone out when they need it, or supporting the feelings of others. The challenges that I often see is that we're used to practicing those kindnesses with other people, but sometimes it can be a lot harder to direct that same kindness back at ourselves. So with that in mind, I'd actually like us to start thinking of a slightly different definition, which is self-kindness, or being kind to yourself. So this means acting in a kind and understanding way, but instead of directing this towards others, we're turning this inwards towards ourselves. As I mentioned, it can be a lot harder for us to do this. It's a lot easier to direct kindness in many cases towards other people. Humans naturally we're pretty tough on ourselves, and self-kindness is not always something that comes naturally to everyone. That being said, and what I'm really hoping the takeaways from this life skills session will be is that there are many ways for us to learn to be more kind to ourselves. These strategies often take effort and practice. And today we're really going to look at some practical common strategies that I see both in my work as an OT and as I said, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. We've already started to touch upon some ideas. I'm also going to try to connect some of these strategies to the uncertain times that we find ourselves in right now with COVID-19. And I'm going to try to tie in a few things that I've seen work for people I work with as a therapist. And I'm looking forward to getting your feedback as well. Before we start talking about those practical strategies to be kind to ourselves, I want to take a quick minute to highlight the benefits of self-kindness or being kind to yourself and talk about, well, what can we gain from prioritizing and working on this skill? So one thing I sometimes hear is that, well, the benefits of being kind to yourself, they seem pretty obvious, or maybe, well, it's kind of a too simple way to deal with your mistakes or your disappointments. But that said, the amazing thing is that there has been more and more research that's been done recently that really focuses on the benefits of self-kindness, and there are many. So one benefit is that by practicing self-kindness, it can deepen and improve our relationship with others. In general, when we're more kind and compassionate to ourselves, this can also help us have an easier time working, living, or interacting with other people. Another benefit of self-kindness is that it can improve our body image. And practicing self-kindness can also help us learn to focus on the positive parts of a situation rather than getting stuck on the problems or criticizing ourselves or getting stuck in those negative thought patterns. A few other benefits of self-kindness include improved motivation and an ability to learn. And this is because by being kind to ourselves, this helps us build something called a growth mindset, which is why I put a picture of a tree here. And this happens when we experience challenges or disappointments where self-kindness helps us to see these events not as personal failures, but as opportunities to grow and to learn. In these situations where there's a challenge, by being kind to ourselves, this can help motivate us to move forward and continue to learn. Practicing self-kindness also helps us build something called resilience. So this is the idea that we can bounce back faster when we've had a setback. So think of this in this picture in the middle, like a ball easily bouncing back from the puddle in the picture. And finally, self-kindness can also strengthen how we do in tasks. By allowing us to take feedback from others in a more positive way, we can then use these pieces of feedback to strengthen or improve how we do things. So these are a couple of the big benefits of being kind to ourselves. So the next question is, well, where do you start? And it can be challenging or overwhelming to know where to begin when looking at self-kindness strategies. Maybe you've tried some things before that have worked, or maybe you've tested some things out in the past that haven't worked so well. So this is the same idea that I talked about last week when thinking about organizational skills, where I also recommended to start simple and start small. And the exact same thing applies when we're thinking about self-kindness strategies. So starting simple could look like only trying one way to be kind to yourself at once, or by starting to pick one area of your life where you'd like to practice being more kind to yourself. Once you've tested out a strategy for a little while and it works, or if it doesn't, you can always try adding a second strategy to be kind to yourself, or pick another area of your life to practice those self-kindness skills. So I wanted to start with this because I want you all to keep the idea of starting simple and small in mind as we talk about specific self-kindness strategies. There's a lot of information, a lot of suggestions I'll be talking about, but it doesn't mean that you need to try all of these strategies at once. That actually would be pretty hard. So start simple, start small. Another piece of advice when starting to look at strategies to be kind to ourselves is that trial and error is okay. You can test out different self-kindness strategies to see what works best for you. And always keep in mind that what works really well for you may not work so well for the next person. So remember, it's totally okay to take the time you need to see what works best for you. Another tip for starting and looking at self-kindness strategies is to remember that these things take a lot of practice for these strategies to become habits. This will take time, this will take effort, and it won't always be easy. And a thing to remember is that we all will still have days where we're hard on ourselves. And this might even be happening more these days because of all of the new challenges that have come up around COVID. But the bottom line here is that while practicing these strategies to be kind to ourselves may be hard some days, the benefit of continuing to practice will help by repeating the strategy and repeating it a few more times after that. It will become easier and will turn into a habit. So keep trying, even if it's hard to begin with. It should get easier with time. The last tip that I want to highlight when you're thinking of getting started or picking some self-kindness strategies to look at is to ask for support if you need it. This could be from friends, family, healthcare workers, or support groups such as the ones run through BIAD or other associations. Support to work on these strategies, this could maybe look like a phone call from a friend or a family member to brainstorm about a strategy that you're trying. Or maybe one of these places or people could provide a reminder for you to practice the strategy. The amount of help and support everyone needs, it's an individual thing, but I would encourage you to reach out to your network of support and ask for assistance if you think you need some support with those self-kindness practices, as well as figuring out what works for you. All right. So as we get into more specific self-kindness strategies, I want to go back 2 weeks and briefly review the topic from our first life skills session, which was the pillars of health. And as a reminder, these are nutrition, water, sleeping, physical activity, social connection, breathing, and a person's emotions. And I bring these up again because going back to these basics is important when we're talking about self-kindness. These 7 pillars of health are the foundation for healthy living. And by making sure that these pillars are in place, this is the most basic first step that we can all take to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, which is a major way we can be kind to ourselves. When we talked about this in week 1, I used the example of a person being represented by a house, which is this picture we have over here on the left-hand side. We were thinking about the pillars of health as being the foundation for your house, which you can see down here, I've pointed to with the yellow arrow. So in order to build a strong house that won't fall down, we first need to make sure we've got that strong foundation. And that strong foundation for your house, those are your pillars. So again, nutrition, water, sleeping, physical activity, social connection, breathing, and a person's emotions. I'm going to briefly review the first 4 pillars of health listed, which are nutrition, water, sleeping, and physical activity. And the last 3 areas, which are social connection, breathing, and emotions, will be covered within specific strategies I talk about a bit later. So a quick review, nutrition and a balanced diet of healthy food gives us energy we need to work on our goals. It helps us do what we need to do every day. It supports good mood, our cognitive performance, and things such as memory, attention, problem solving. So in Canada's Food Guide, a balanced diet of plenty of vegetables and fruit, whole grain foods, and protein foods are recommended. And a balanced diet also means eating the right amount of food. So this is a terrific picture from the Canada Food Guide, which has a snapshot of what you should be trying to make your plate look like. So for a balanced meal, half of your plate is those fruits and vegetables, a quarter is those protein foods, and a quarter is the whole grains. And we do have those week 1 slides. Nicole has those if you want to look at any of this information in more detail. Other simple strategies to make sure you have a healthy diet include trying not to skip meals, paying attention to your hunger, try to slow down eating at meals, looking for healthy, less processed options, making a grocery list and meal plan, and try cooking at home more often. And all of this information is in more detail in the slides from week 1. The second pillar of health I want to briefly review is water intake. So water, as you know, is essential to keep our bodies healthy, and it's important for us to drink enough water as part of us taking care of ourselves. The average person needs about 8 glasses of water per day, or better yet, pay attention to your thirst, as you may need more water than 8 glasses if you're exercising, if it's hot outside, or if you're sick. And again, take a look back at those slides from week 1 if you want some more details. The third pillar of health I want to briefly review with you is sleep. And this is a huge way we can be kind to ourselves. So the average adult needs about 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Well, some people might feel like they're rested after maybe just an hour or two of sleep. Unfortunately, this means their performance in daily tasks might be affected. So, for example, someone who sleeps less than 7 hours per night might have a harder time doing complex tasks than someone who's had a full night of sleep. So if you've ever heard the expression, all problems seem better after a good night's sleep, this is why. Sleep gives you the energy and the brain power needed to engage in problem solving and to also participate in those self-kindness strategies. Other tips that support a good night's sleep is trying to keep with a regular wake and sleep schedule, trying to avoid daytime naps if you can, making your bedroom a relaxing place to be, avoiding large meals, alcohol, or caffeine before bed, and trying to stick to a regular bedtime routine. And the last pillar of health I'll be briefly reviewing here is physical activity. The bottom line with this is that everyone benefits from some physical activity, no matter how old you are, what your sex is, or what your physical abilities are. Physical activity can help with weight control, decreasing disease risk, improving mood, boosting energy. It can help with sleep, and it can be fun. And the key thing here is that a good general goal for the average person is to try to get 20 to 30 minutes per day of physical activity. So these days, if you're concerned about not getting enough physical activity with COVID, a simple tip that I've seen work for some people is to try to go for a walk early in the morning or later in the evening when the streets are less busy. Another option might be to consider planning out a less traveled route. It's really amazing and how helpful even a small amount of fresh air can be when you're looking at physical activity. Some other options for movement and physical activity when thinking of COVID specifically, there's many YouTube videos that offer free movement classes. I know that BIAD and other associations offer exercise groups online. And the key thing here is to remember, no matter what physical activity or movement looks like for you, any amount of activity is better than none at all. So just try to get more active during the day. This could be taking the stairs instead of the elevator. This could look like walking around your home a little bit more or doing some more household tasks. Bottom line is it can look different for everyone, and find something you enjoy. But being physically active is a major way we can also take care of ourselves and be kind to ourselves. As one of you mentioned, 2 hours at the gym makes a big difference. So the bottom line here is when your pillars of health are in place, you're building the foundation for healthy living. And by covering these bases, you're building a strong foundation for everything you do. And this is the simplest, most basic way you can start to be kind to yourself. Oops. So there's a lot of text on this slide, but I did want to take a minute before we get into those strategies just to make sure we know or are starting to think of, okay, what's the difference between positive thinking and then on the flip side, well, what's negative thinking? So a good way to think about this is through the expression, well, is your glass half full or is your glass half empty? So when a person is engaging in more positive thinking, they are working to make their glass or think of their glass as half full. So in general, this means that people are trying to look towards the best in what could happen and not the worst, and trying to approach challenges in a more positive or productive way. This doesn't mean that someone's ignoring a challenge or something that's upsetting or unpleasant, but that they're looking at it in a more optimistic way. So an example of positive thinking could be that, even though COVID has made it difficult to see our family or friends in person, by thinking positively about this can allow people to find solutions. So, okay, well, I can't see you in person, but maybe we can do a Zoom call. Maybe we can have a weekly phone call, and trying to find some solutions around that. So the flip side is negative thinking. So when someone is engaging in some more negative thought patterns, they tend to think of their glass as half empty. So in general, this means that they're more likely to assume that the worst will happen. Negative thinking can cause people to approach challenges in a less productive way. It's also harder to focus on good things that have happened. So if you're thinking a bit more negatively, it may be easy to forget all of the good things that have happened in your day just because one thing that didn't go so well happened. So for example, say you had a terrific day where you got a whole pile of things done, you were really happy, and then you forgot to pay your bill. If you're thinking more negatively, that mistake, so missing your bill, can take over all of those positive things that happened in a day. Negative thinking can also cause people to blame themselves when something goes wrong. And it can also make it easy to think of things as only good or bad, and where there's no middle ground. And this is tricky because this can lead to people thinking that they need to do everything perfectly or else they've failed. And if you look over at this glass on the right-hand side, most people, we have a mix of both of these patterns of thinking at any given time. Usually no one's thinking all positive or all negative. We're all humans and tend to have a mix of both. But that being said, even though we experience a mix of positive emotions and negative emotions and the way we think, there are simple steps that anyone can take to practice shifting any negative thinking towards positive thinking. And this is tricky because this takes time and it takes practice because you're building a new habit. But by practicing ways to think more positively, this is a great way to be kind to yourself and help shift your thinking in a more optimistic direction. Positive thinking can also help with stress management, building coping skills, and can improve both our physical health and our emotional health. Okay, so how do we start thinking in a more positive way? So step one on the left is to pay attention to situations or areas in your life where you tend to have more negative thoughts. Every single one of us has a stream of unspoken thoughts that run through our head throughout the day. And these thoughts can be positive or negative. But by taking the time to pay close attention to these thoughts, you will hopefully begin to get a better understanding of when you think in a positive way or when you think in a negative way. Once you've identified those areas where you've noticed that you're thinking more negatively, over here on the right is that you can pick areas to work on and think about what you would like to change. The next step is to start small. So pick maybe one of these areas to try to approach in a more positive way. So an example here might be that, say you have some negative thoughts about an activity that you're no longer able to do because of COVID. And thinking about this is upsetting. It's a negative experience to think about this. So maybe this, as an example, would be an area that you think, okay, I want to try to approach this in a more positive way. So by trying to reframe that, maybe you can come up with a more problem-solving approach to find ways to approach the changes that have happened to that activity. So, okay, I can't do this thing I used to do, but maybe I could do it in a different way, or maybe I could try something else. Another step to thinking more positively is to check yourself throughout the day. So taking a moment to stop and just check in to see how you're feeling. And when you do that, you can ask yourself, okay, how am I thinking right now? So in that moment, if you find that your thoughts are mainly negative, you can try to find a way to put a positive spin on it. So I've got a very simple example here about something I think most of us probably love, which is ice cream. So here's a simple example of switching our thoughts around. So say you decide you want to go to the ice cream store and you have your heart set on chocolate chip. But unfortunately, when you get to the store, you find that they're completely sold out. So this is a time where you can check yourself in that moment. Maybe, check in and see what your thoughts about this experience are. If you're having negative thoughts, maybe this would look like something along the lines of, oh, I didn't want anything other than chocolate chip. I wasted my time coming to the ice cream store. Or I'm so disappointed. I can't believe they don't have any more ice cream. So in that moment, if you're checking yourself and find your thoughts are mainly negative, a strategy in that moment is to try to make a positive spin on that situation. So this might look like something along the lines of, oh, well, it's too bad they don't have the chocolate chip ice cream, but it's okay. I'll just come back for ice cream tomorrow. Or, well, it's too bad they don't have chocolate chip, but maybe this is a great chance for me to try some new flavors. So by paying attention to your thoughts in that moment, and by trying to put a positive spin on what could be a negative experience, this is a really good example of practicing positive thinking and positive self-talk. And by even finding some small ways to reframe your thinking, this helps you learn to be kinder to yourself. And it also helps you learn to handle everyday stress in a more productive way. So thank you for indulging me with my ice cream example. So a few other steps I want to highlight, and some of these things have come up already as practices to think more positively, include being open to humor. So this is giving yourself permission to smile or to laugh, especially during difficult times that you might find yourselves in. When you find moments to laugh in life, this helps with feeling less stressed. And I know there's a lot to worry about these days, but finding some time to find something funny or light to balance out the heaviness of the world can be a really helpful strategy. So this could be something like looking at a funny cartoon, or looking at silly videos on YouTube, or joking with a friend, whatever that looks like for you. But we all benefit from a bit of comic relief. And this is a really good way to practice being kind to ourselves. Another step to thinking more positively is to try to surround ourselves with positive people, people who can support you and give you helpful feedback and advice. And these strong social connections can help you manage your stress in better ways, prevent loneliness, boost your self-esteem, and also help with your mental health. Another step when trying to think more positively is to keep trying to use that positive self-talk. So since we're often hard on ourselves, it can be difficult to be kind to ourselves in the same way that we're kind to others. So a simple rule for positive self-talk is not to say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to someone else. So with this, practice being gentle, encouraging, and kind to yourself. If you have a negative thought that pops into your mind, take a moment to recognize it. You can evaluate it, and then try to think of a positive way to reframe that thought. Another thing to practice to help think more positively is something called self-acceptance. And this means that you practice accepting everything about yourself. So your current situation, your life, and practicing this self-acceptance without questioning or blaming yourself. So something like this can be especially important during COVID-19, where expectations we may have previously had for ourselves before the pandemic have had to change or may no longer be possible. So practicing those self-acceptance strategies can help you manage the expectations you have for yourselves, especially during these unpredictable times. And a thing to remember here is to remember that you and everyone else, everyone's doing their best in a tough situation, and practicing positive self-talk and self-acceptance during these times are really powerful tools for us to be kind to ourselves. So I just wanted to highlight a few examples here of, over on the left, some negative thoughts that might pop into your head, and then ways that you can practice shifting these thoughts in a more positive direction. So for example, say a negative thought that pops into your head is, oh, I've never done it before. But by trying to reframe that in a positive way, instead that can be, oh, I can learn to try something new. Or another example of something negative that pops up, oh, I'm never going to learn this new strategy. Or this is really hard. And positive self-talk might be, I'll give it another try. I'm going to keep trying. So these, I won't go through all of these, but these are a few examples just of everyday general things that might come up, and ways in that moment to try to switch the way you think about that. Another final helpful step I want to talk about when thinking more positively and being kind to yourself is to practice gratitude. So gratitude, this is a feeling of being thankful for and appreciating the things in your lives. So one of you just mentioned appreciating some travel and art experiences you've had. That's a perfect example of this. By practicing this gratitude, it means that you're taking time to notice and reflect on good things that have happened in your lives. One specific tool that might be helpful is keeping a gratitude journal. So there actually has been some research on this saying that by keeping track of things that you're thankful or appreciative of, this is a great way for us to feel more happy and positive about our lives. So everyone is grateful for different things. So I just wrote a few examples down here. So I'm grateful for my quiet room, the view out my window, my guitar, and so on. So this will all be individual. Everyone's grateful for different things, but by taking the time to think and reflect on what's good, this will help with positive thinking and self-kindness. So just jumping into this in a little bit more detail, in case maybe you're new to meditation or mindfulness, I just wanted to chat for a second. Well, what is it? So meditation It's a way of focusing your thoughts and attention as a way to become calm, focused, and relaxed. And it trains us to be more aware of our thoughts. It can also help us stay grounded. I believe someone mentioned that earlier, as well as rational, and helps us manage our emotions, including stress, more easily. And mindfulness is the awareness of the present moment and being fully engaged in the here and now. And part of this is the practice of accepting our feelings, our thoughts, and how our body feels in the present moment. And these two ideas really go hand in hand with each other, because by taking time to focus on our thoughts and to meditate, it is easier to become mindful and be in the present moment. And both of these practices can also support self-talk, positive self-talk, and self-acceptance, which we just discussed, as meditation and mindfulness can help us be aware of our thoughts and understand ourselves a bit more. Also gives us a chance to practice observing our thoughts without judgment. So a quick note, who can benefit from meditation? Well, pretty much everyone. This is a practice that can work for virtually every person. This is a skill that can be grown over time, though. It might not be easy right away, but it can be improved by practicing regularly. And there's lots of research out there that shows that meditation helps with self-kindness, helps us focus better. It can help us manage our stress, our mood, our anxiety. It can also help us be more kind and compassionate to others. And as a result of all of this, it can also help us improve our performance in tasks. And there's many, many different types of meditation out there that I'm not going to get into, but I wanted to highlight two of the main types. So one is more of a meditation that requires you to concentrate. So a concentrative meditation involves focusing all of your attention on a specific object or one thing while tuning out everything that's going on around you. So the goal with this is really to experience whatever you're focusing on, whether it's your breath, whether it's a specific word. Sounds like some of you, this actually is music. And whatever it takes to find a relaxed state of focus and of getting to a more peaceful place. The second type of meditation is mindfulness meditation, which is a bit different because overall that involves the state of just being aware of and involved with whatever is going on in the present moment. So maybe that's a sound you hear, maybe that's something you smell, maybe that's some music in a room. That could also be all of the different things going on with you at once, or how you're feeling in your body. But it really comes down to being mindful about what's happening in the present moment. And this can help you become more open, more aware of yourself, and help with practice self-acceptance. And some of you talked about a few different resources you're already using. So the YMCA sounds like there's some meditation and yoga there. There's some other people who are running programs in a building, or there's some tapes. There's tons of meditation resources out there. So the bottom line is you don't need a membership to somewhere fancy or to a yoga studio to try meditation for yourself. And I've included just a few resources here to give you an idea of some starting points. Two of the most common apps that you can find on a smartphone for meditation are the Calm app or the Headspace app. And they're they both have a monthly cost of about $20 per month, but you can also test out free trials for both of these to see if you like them, to see if it's helpful. And between those two apps, Calm and Headspace, there's hundreds of different guided meditations of different lengths, of different styles. They might focus on anxiety or focus or gratitude or a meditation to help with sleep. There's so many different types and ways to meditate out there. This can give you a chance to test out what works best for you. That being said, if you want to test out some free options first, sounds like you have out there already have a couple of resources that you use, but a few that I know of, there is this website here, Excel at Life, which is where a psychologist has recorded some free guided relaxation resources. And even if you just go on YouTube and type in guided meditation, the sky's the limit. There's tons of stuff on there as well. Another possible place to start, I believe that Bayad has a meditation group every few weeks as well. So these are just a few places to think about. And the last thing I wanted to highlight from a mindfulness and meditation point of view is that movement can actually be a piece of this as well. So by focusing on movement that you're doing in a present moment, this can also help you relax. So even though movement isn't always necessarily what you think of when you think of relaxation or meditation, tasks involving movement, especially repetitive movements, can have a gentle calming effect. So think of a repetitive movement like knitting or going for a walk or doing some yoga sequences or painting. These are a few examples of calming repetitive movements that might help with being present and being more relaxed as well. I want to get into a few more specific strategies for self-kindness. So a very useful self-kindness tip is to stick to a routine. So I know we spoke about this last week if you joined us for the strategies for organization, but the same thing applies to self-kindness. So try as best you can to go to sleep and wake up at the same time. Try to find a routine that has a balance of different activities. So self-care, productive tasks, fun activities, and just as importantly, rest. So by building simple self-care steps into your daily routines, such as making your bed in the morning, showering, putting on a fresh set of clothes, or moving to a different space in your home, can be helpful as a kindness strategy to boost your mood. So take a moment to think about what activities in your day-to-day life or routines that help make you feel good. And by thinking about, well, what makes me feel good, take those tasks and try to build those into your everyday routine so that they're part of your routine. And one thing to note is that every single person's routine and balance of tasks is going to look slightly different. So pay attention to what works for you and try to be consistent with your routine. This can be a very helpful strategy. Another self-kindness strategy, especially when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, is to try chunking your time. And what this means is taking things moment by moment. So since it's sometimes hard these days to even know what things will look like in one day, 1 week, or even 1 month, this chunking strategy helps people to focus on bite-sized challenges to make things feel more manageable. So this will look a little bit different for everyone. It might mean chunking your time only in 5-minute pieces at a time. So for example, you could start by thinking, okay, so in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to get dressed. Okay, so now I've gotten dressed. In the next 5 minutes, I am going to wash my face and brush my teeth. Okay, now I've done that. In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. So that's one example. Those are really short chunks. A chunk for you could also look at like maybe a day at a time. So for example, I'm only going to think about what I'm going to do today. I won't worry about tomorrow yet. So regardless of what this chunking looks like for you, the idea is to set a time stamp for how far ahead in the future you will let yourself worry. So by tackling one chunk at a time, this helps you move through stressful moments in, again, those bite-sized pieces, which helps things be more manageable. This can also help you set realistic expectations for yourself during this time. Another self-kindness strategy, especially if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, is to pay attention to what I call your media diet. And by this, I mean how much and what kind of information you're consuming through different media platforms. So email, social media sites, TV, or news. There can be a lot of information out there, and it can often feel negative or alarming, especially now with COVID-19, where information seems to change on an almost daily basis. Well, of course, it's important to stay up to date with the news and important information. The flip side is that it doesn't take long before this can become overwhelming. So with this in mind, some tips to help manage your media diet in a way that helps you be kind to yourself includes picking trusted, reliable sources of information to check in on. So for example, this could be the Ministry of Health or a few reputable news sources. A second tip is to set a time limit for how much social media or news you consume on a daily basis. A good suggestion that I've heard is helpful from people I work with is to try to keep that time under 30 minutes daily and try not to check more than 2 or 3 times over the course of the day. A final suggestion when thinking about your media diet is to take digital breaks where you step away from your screen and try to get outside if you can. This can be a really helpful way to press reset and help you relax, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed with the news. Okay, and another tip for self-kindness is to set goals that are within your control. So in moments of uncertainty or where things outside of your control feel overwhelming, you can set a goal in an area of your life that you can control. So for example, this could look like organizing your bookshelf or trying a new meal, maybe learning a new skill. And by doing and making goals that are within our control, this helps to anchor and ground us when there's a lot of uncertainty going on in the world or where bigger things are outside of our control. Does anyone have any questions about any of that or comments? All right, all good. So another self-kindness strategy is to prioritize our social connections. So a strong social support network, this can be critical to help us through the stress of tough times, whether you've had a bad day, whether you've had an illness, whatever that looks like for you. But the bottom line is having supports from others can help us improve our ability to cope with stressful situations or feelings of isolation or loneliness. Social connection can also help with both our physical health and our mental health and improve our self-esteem. So I just want to highlight again the importance of connecting with others and providing each other with support during this time. Maybe this is over the phone or over text message, Zoom, or perhaps a physically distant visit with a friend. But the bottom line is that our social connections help us stay strong, and by prioritizing those, it's a good way for us to stay kind and be kind to ourselves. So a general goal is try to reach out to others maybe once a day for at least 30 minutes to help keep yourself connected to your friends, your family, or whoever else is in your network. And a few quick tips to build and prioritize those social connections. So plan regular check-ins. So maybe as part of your daily routines in your morning or in your evening, maybe you have regular phone calls or check-in times with other people. And the other one is to be a good listener to others. Try to make sure when you're interacting with someone that you are listening just as much as you're talking, because chances are the person you're speaking to also might need some support. A few other tips to build social connections: help people out when they need it. So during this time, you can keep a lookout for ways, big and small, to give back to others. Maybe this looks like checking in with an elderly neighbor or supporting a local business. This also can look like giving encouragement to your family or friends or coworkers. And another tip to remember is to be kind to others. Everyone will have a moment where they're not always going to be at their best. And by giving others the benefit of the doubt and being supportive and kind, this can help everyone deal with the challenges that they might be having, especially these days. And a quick note, some places to make social connections if you're looking to build new social connections might be online, volunteering, joining a group such as those at BIAD, or taking a class. And the last strategy I'll be talking about is something called the self-care toolkit. And a few of you have kind of highlighted things that work for you, which I think fall into this category. So your self-care toolkit, these are things that help you feel comfortable, help you feel safe, or help you feel calm. So for example, maybe this is a hot cup of tea or hot chocolate. This could be music. It could be a warm blanket, a bubble bath, a candle, a good book. Maybe it's a comforting meal you like. Maybe it's writing in a journal. Maybe it's a meditation app. It could be pretty much anything. And there's no right or wrong answer for what can go in your own personal self-care toolkit. But the bottom line is that it's helpful to think about and know what strategies help you feel that comfort and that safety. Because then in moments of stress or uncertainty, you can have this toolkit of ideas, and that can help you know how to take care of yourself in those moments. Okay, I'm wrapping up. We're just coming to the end here. The last final tip, and if you guys have been to all 3 weeks, you probably heard me say this before, but the final tip for self-kindness is to reach out for help if you need it. If you feel like you're having difficulty coping, ask for help. This can look like reaching out to friends, family, maybe a group, or a healthcare worker. So this could be your family doctor if you have a therapy team. And if needed, your healthcare workers will also have other resources for other mental health supports if that's something you think you need. But the bottom line is, if this is tough and you feel like you need some support, it's okay to ask for help. And I always encourage you to do that if you think you need to. So the bottom line, so my big overall review is, for practical ways to be kind to yourself, some of the big picture ideas: so start simple and small, try one self-kindness strategy at a time, or pick one area of your life to start working on, and see how that goes. Build on your successes, and this will prevent these things from getting too overwhelming. Trial and error, it's also okay. You can test out different strategies and just see what works best for you. So as we've heard today from all of you, different things work for different people, and that's a really cool thing. So it's okay to test out different options. Number 3 is practice, practice, practice. Any new strategies, they will take effort. It's not an easy overnight thing, but at the same time, the more you practice these strategies, the easier it will become. And the last one, which I just said a moment ago, is ask for support to work on these strategies if you need it. So the bottom line is with all of this, and I hope the take home from today is that it can take time for self-kindness strategies to become habits. And everyone is still going to have some days where you might not be as positive or as kind to yourself. And that's okay. The trick is to keep trying these different strategies, and they'll hopefully become more automatic with time. So on that note, I'm done. That was a lot of information, so thank you for bearing with me. And